Planes are pretty much the best method of travel when it comes to covering really long distances in a short amount of time. But if you clicked on this video, you're probably wondering how they actually work. Don't worry, bro. I'm about to explain. Basically, there are a few key elements going on with these things. The shape of the plane, the design of the plane, and obviously the engines. Let's go ahead and start off with the shape of the plane, more specifically, aerodynamics. Aerodynamics are defined as the properties of a solid object regarding the manner in which air flows around it. In not nerd terminology, it basically just means how air moves around objects. Figuring out the aerodynamics of a plane sounds pretty complex, but they really aren't. All we have to do is look at birds. Birds have wings, and wings are naturally shaped so that when they're in motion, the air flows under and around them in such a way that it pushes the air down, keeping the bird in the air. So, as you can probably guess, we kinda just took some metal and copied bird wings word for word, bar for bar. Once we did that, we threw them on the sides of a plane, and then boom, we started flying. This downwards force that the wings generate is actually the reason why the plane won't just drop out of the sky if your engines stop working, allowing you to glide to safety if you really had to in an emergency. The aerodynamics of the wings also help to stabilize the aircraft in flight, so turbulence and other things don't move the plane around too much, which is an added bonus. Now earlier I said when the plane is in motion when talking about this downwards force, and that brings me to the next part of this explanation, the thrust. The wings counteract gravity by creating lift in the vertical axis, but the engines are important for creating thrust in the horizontal axis. This is what actually makes the plane move, so start paying attention. Jet engines are basically just giant fans with a few extra steps, so don't be too worried when I explain this. The first component of a jet engine is the intake in the front. The intake is basically, like I just said, a giant fan. It spins really fast, sucking in as much air as possible, which leads that air to the next part of the engine, the compression area. I don't really know what to call this part scientifically, but basically the air just gets compressed a lot, where it then gets sent to part 3, the combustion area. Kind of like a car engine, the jet engine takes the compressed air and mixes it with jet fuel, and then sparks this mixture so that it explodes. This explosion doesn't blow up the engine though. It actually pushes the resulting gas out of the back of the engine, magically creating thrust and pushing the plane towards wherever it's headed. There's more to it than that though. The plane still has to direct where that thrust is going through all of the fins and rudders. These fins and rudders are called control surfaces, of which there are 3 primary ones: ailerons, elevators, and rudders. Each of these surfaces serves a specific purpose in controlling the aircraft's motion along its 3 axes: roll, pitch, and yaw, or if you've played Minecraft, X, Y, and Z. There are also the flaps, slats, and spoilers, which do even more fancy air stuff. But basically all of these control surfaces help with maneuvering the plane while it's in the air, as well as helping it take off and land safely. Now that we've covered the physics side of how planes operate, I'm going to talk about how planes know how to do all of the other stuff that they do, like navigation for example. So planes navigate through a few different means, and one of them is GPS, or Global Positioning System. GPS navigation is a satellite-based navigation system that provides pilots with accurate and reliable position information. This system is used widely by pilots and the world to navigate during flights, and it isn't just some fancy stuff that only planes can use. We use GPS every day on our phones and in our cars too. Basically, GPS works by having one satellite dap up a receiver device like your phone, then it does some calculations to figure out where you are depending on how long it took for the receiver to receive the ping. Along with that, there's radar and radio communication that are used with the air traffic control tower. This thing's job is basically just to direct flights that are inside a designated area. So that's how your plane knows where it is. But on top of that, there are a whole bunch of instruments that do other things too. Things like an altimeter that tells you how high you are, or a gyroscope to see things like the bank angle the plane is turning at, or just a regular old compass. All of these help to keep the plane in the air and headed towards wherever you're going. Most of the analog instruments in the plane's cockpit work in some form off of the Earth's magnetism. So unless Earth somehow loses its magnetic field while you're flying, I would go ahead and say that malfunctioning instruments won't cause any major problems. So that's pretty much how planes work. Obviously, I'm not a pilot. In reality, I'm just a guy who likes science. So if you thought this video was cool, be sure to subscribe.